Hi, everybody. Can you believe it? We're already to Module 6. I have really appreciated all the hard work you put into your discussions and the essay that we've been working on for the final project. It was a pleasure to take a look at your essays and see how far you've come and the different stages of development that you've been going through. Our discussions last week were really exciting. I know some of it may have looked a bit crazy in my responses to you as I try to include the deductive logic piece, which often does not get included in critical thinking ethics class. Usually we just talk about inductive reasoning, but I thought I would give you a bit of a flavor of what deductive logical syllogisms look like. Don't worry if you don't understand them. They are quite complex, but if they looked interesting to you, you might consider signing up for a logic class. It is kind of more like math, so just a warning there. Anyway, I wanted to get started with you on Module 6, so let's take our walkthrough. As usual, we will be going to the Module 6 tab. So go ahead and click on that link and scroll down, and you will see that we are going to be discussing inductive and deductive arguments. So fun, more logic. Let's go ahead to the learning pathway and click there, and you will see that we will be doing both inductive and deductive arguments this week. So what you did last week will have prepared you for what we're going to be covering in this module. So we're going to be looking at different types of reasoning in our arguments and exploring arguments based on generalizations and arguments by analogy. I thought you did a great job identifying some different types of fallacies in our discussion and applying them to your own lives. So we will just continue on with that work here. We're going to be learning more about the characteristics of a particular population by studying a representative sample of that population. So looking at surveys, polls, and scientific experiments to aid us in this endeavor. So finally, we'll examine some causal arguments, which play a key role in scientific observation and experimentation. As you can see, we are applying scientific type methods to the area of critical thinking and expanding it beyond science into the world of critical thinking. And this type of argument can apply to anything in your life, academic and outside of academics. So it's really exciting to become aware of these things and begin taking a look at how people are presenting their arguments to you in the workplace, with your friends, your family, on the news. I think you're going to, observe that there are some really interesting arguments out there, not necessarily quite as valid as you may have thought in the beginning. So don't feel shy about changing your opinion on some of the arguments that you've seen. So if you take a look here at our learning pathway, you'll see there are some required readings, some module notes, and then a discussion on inductive and deductive arguments. That post is due by Thursday with your replies to your classmates due by Sunday. You'll also see that there are some instructions for our SmartBook quiz on chapters 7 and chapter 8. So you will have had a little taste of deductive arguments in chapter 8 before you get there. Hopefully that will help set you along the right course. And then you will notice that we will be working on final project 3, the reflective essay, and that is due by Sunday. So let's go ahead and walk through all those pieces individually by clicking on the next button. This button will take you over to our required readings. You'll see there are some module notes, and we'll be reading Boss once again. You'll also see that there are some things to view, study.com, the differences between inductive and deductive reasoning video, and the episode 1.3 deductive and inductive arguments video. So hopefully these videos will clarify anything that you've read in our text or that I've posted in our discussion area and make things a little bit easier to understand. So click the next button, and that will bring you over to our module notes on inductive and deductive reasoning, giving you the chapter highlights again, covering what deductive argument is as opposed to inductive argument, talking about some of the types of deductive arguments. I mentioned a few during our Module 5 discussions, but you'll see there's a whole host of them, and you can use them to determine validity and soundness of an argument. And you'll also see that we will be looking more at generalizations. We will be using some arguments by analogy, thinking about causal reasoning and the role that plays in our life, and looking at syllogisms and how we know whether or not they're valid. So if you have any trouble with syllogisms, please feel free to reach out. I have taught logic before, and I know it can be a little confusing. Go ahead and click the next button, and that'll take you over to our inductive and deductive arguments section. And so the purpose of this activity is to construct inductive and deductive arguments, and you'll also have the opportunity to explore issues of causality and certainty, which aligns with our modules outcomes 1 and 2. So you have a selection for your discussions, and you only have to answer one of the following questions. So you can take a look through those and see which questions appeal to you. I look forward to our discussions. Go ahead and click the next button, and this will bring you over to our instructions for the Smart Book quiz on chapters 7 and 8. Again, this is just a knowledge check to see how well you understood those chapters. And remember, it is worth 25% of your overall course grade. So click the next button, and it will take you to chapter 7 on inductive arguments. You can go ahead and load that chapter and take a look through. And then if you click the next button, this will give you the overview of our chapter 8 deductive arguments. And then after that, if you click the next button, this will bring you to part 3 of our final reflective essay. So yes, you are still working on the same topic in this third installment of our 4-part project. And so here again, you're going to produce a 4 to 5 page reflective essay that contains the 5 components outlined below. And remember to use those APA citations. For those of you that were not using APA, I made a note in my feedback for the second installment of our project. And I also posted some sources so that you could review APA formatting if you were needed a brush up or unfamiliar with that type of formatting. So you're going to revisit your challenge or hardship, the same one you've been talking about, but you're going to be answering some different questions now. So really what works well is if you take the information from part 1 and part 2 and give us a little summary and an introductory paragraph of what you discussed, and then transition into part 3, and then give us a thesis statement that outlines what you'll be discussing in part 3. That approach works very well to synthesize what you've already done and then point us in the direction that you will be going. So you will be doing, you'll be talking about stage 3 cognitive development here. So this is obviously where you're just not blindly following authority. And we are moving on to identifying premises and conclusions. So we're applying the material from Module 5 and now Module 6 to this project. So you can see here the questions that you'll be answering are a little bit different from the questions in the past. So be thinking about and maybe taking some notes as you read through our chapters about how you might want to work this into the part 3 of the final project. I find it easiest when I am putting together assignments to make notes while I am reading through the textbook for things that I might want to use later in the assignments that I construct. I find that saves me time and is a helpful way of synthesizing the information that I am learning with my own personal reflections. Okay, so if you scroll down, you'll see the rubric, and it is very similar to the rubric we've already been using. You'll be, being able to identify content and making those key connections to the material that we've been studying in class, evaluating your own thoughts and personal reflections. Organization, I already talked about a good strategy for organization, and then taking a look at your grammar. I'm usually pretty lenient on grammar as long as there are no glaring mistakes. I usually give you a pretty good grade. I do take off some points if your essay is not formatted in APA. And then another reason I might take off points for grammar is if you have not done any proofreading. So that's just something to keep in mind as you put your project together. And so that wraps up Module 6 for us. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out this week. I'm always available to help you, and I hope you have a great week.